Welcome, brothers and sisters, to the Mayor Baba program. I'm Fred Stankus with the Mayor Baba Center here of Southern California. And today's program is part 2 of Baba's 5 Perfect Masters. Last week we talked about 3 of Baba's Perfect Masters. He had 5 Perfect Masters. And we talked about Hazrat Babajan. And Babajan lived to be between 130 to 140 years old. She was a Muslim perfect master. And then we talked about Narayan Maharaj, who was the yogi of yogis, you could say, the master of yogis. He was one of Baba's perfect masters also. He was Hindu. And then we talked about Tajuddin Baba, or Taj. He was a Muslim perfect master. And then this week, we're going to talk about Sai Baba of Shirdi. Don't confuse them. There's a current Sai Baba that also is still living. This is the old Sai Baba of Shirdi, the early 1900s. And then, finally, we're going to talk about Upasni Maharaj of Sikori, who was, you could say, a disciple of Sai Baba of Shirdi. And one thing about this photograph, again, I just wanted to present it. Can you zoom in on the man's breast, the top one? Not this one, the other one. You see an image of Krishna? Pull back a little bit. You see that image there? There's an image right here. They say that's Vitoba, or Krishna, that was actually seen in this photo of Upasni Maharaj of Sikori, right there. I mean, you may want to see it right here. I mean, let me get my finger right there. I'm touching it right on top. It's right there. There's an image of Krishna. So, talking about Meher Baba, he's an avatar, God-man of the age. Avatars have perfect masters who basically bring him down. Perfect masters have functions to help humanity. As we heard last week's program, perfect masters actually have many people come to them for their blessings, and they basically assume all the, you could say, the ills and garbage of each one of us, our minds and so forth, and they try to recycle that and purify it into impressions that help out all of humanity. So perfect masters are on earth at all times. Currently, right now, according to Meher Baba, there's 56 perfect masters on earth at all times. 5 of those are perfect masters who are working with humanity, and they represent the God-man in between avataric events. Each advent has a God-man and has 5 perfect masters. Jesus had 5 perfect masters. I only can relate that St. John the Baptist was one of them. I know that there was others that were related to Jesus, and Muhammad had 5 perfect masters, Zoroaster, Rama, Krishna. And if you study Buddha and you study their lives, you'd find out some of these secrets about they basically are in authority in between the advents of a God-man who descends on earth. There are 700, 1400, 2100 year cycles in between advents of the God-man. In the meantime, those masters are in charge of creation in between the intervals. And when the God-man comes down, they assign their authority over to the avatar of the age. So these 5 work with Avatar Meher Baba. And so now we're going to talk about Sai Baba of Shirdi. And again, let's just show who that is. Sai Baba of Shirdi, which it's amazing about Sai Baba of Shirdi. People, he had followers both of Hindu and Muslim traditions. And was this fakir, as he was called, a Hindu, or was he a Muslim? And people of every religion and caste in India would go to him. This holy man was especially unique, for he belonged to no caste or religion or ism. This fakir was too poor and too great to belong to anything. Why would people journey hundreds of miles from all over the Indian subcontinent to see him? It was because of his eyes. The eyes of this fakir were said to be light. Some would say, those eyes. His eyes shine with more brilliance than the sun. They are magnetic. His eyes must be made of light. However one described them, if it was those eyes that eventually attracted thousands to him. Upon looking into his eyes, one would bow and worship at his feet. Hidden in this extraordinary fakir was the Kitub-er-Ishad of the age. This fakir was the head of the spiritual hierarchy and the leading perfect master of his time. As I mentioned earlier, they're in charge in between advents of the God-man. He who held the key to all universes in his own hands appeared as a ragged beggar in a small village called Shirdi. In this beggar's hands, the throws of the universes were kept balanced. It may be difficult for a worldly materialist to believe this, but it is a spiritual fact. If people were told this peculiar holy man was completely responsible for conducting or controlling World War I, they would say it was ridiculous. But in the inner realms of spiritual realities, the Kitubs or Sadgurus, perfect masters, are the masters of the universe, and nothing ever happens without their divine ordinance. Yes, so Sai Baba was in control. And in regards to that comment, once remarking about Sai Baba, Meher Baba stated, "It was Sai Baba who controlled the First World War. There would be no war without the five perfect masters' will and guidance." Meher Baba used to recall Sai Baba with the most affection as grandfather and described Sai's greatness as perfection personified. So, this beggar's appearance was most deceiving. He was the mightiest king in heaven or on earth, but he did not care if people saw him merely as a beggar. Now the sun of his divinity had shed its light. He has done his duty. One must do his. To understand him, one must care. He who cares gains because of knowing him. To research the life of a man become God, or Sadguru or Kitub, is difficult, because when he is embodied, when his sun is brightly shining, all eyes are focused on him. It is only after the sun sets that our attention shifts to recording his story. Without becoming a fakir, one can never fathom such a master's life. Whatever he reveals to the world is just a few rays of his light. And so the true story of every perfect one cannot be known in detail. That fakir, of whom the world has come to know, never even allowed his fellow man to know his family or childhood name. Our age has named him Sai, which means the Lord or the Holy One. So Sai Baba means the Holy One or Lord Baba. Nothing is definitely known about his birth. Some believe that Sai was born into a Brahmin family, a high caste family, that his parents died and he was then raised by a Muslim ascetic. So here he is, a Hindu boy raised by a Muslim. Some believe, however, that he was born in a Mohammedan family, and most biographers agree with this belief. So now there's another side that believe he was born in a Mohammedan family raised by a Hindu. So whatever the circumstances of his birth and childhood, they are lost facts. One must concern oneself with Sai the master, not the man, in whose eyes all are one. It is said that Sai was born in 1838 in a Sailu village in the Jintur district of India. But recent evidence points to his birthplace in being in the Pathri village in the Parhani district, and it also said that his childhood was spent near Aurangabad in Maharashtra. One known fact, however, is that his parents were very, very, very poor. After his father's death, when he was still a young child, his mother was forced by circumstances to resort to begging for their maintenance. One must wonder what sort of drama this was. He who was destined to be the Lord of the universe had to spend his childhood among the destitute, homeless, begging on the streets. What an unfathomable design by God. The man through whom the world's destiny was to be guided was brought up in the most pitiable destruction. Our age heard the young boy cry, "Mother, walk slowly. I cannot go faster. I cannot go on." And the mother lifted the boy in her arms with tears in her eyes. "Mother, I am very hungry. When will someone give us some food?" And his mother in a choking voice told him, "Son, have patience. God is merciful. There is a village not far from here where we will find bread." Sensing his mother's plight, the boy said, "Mother, I do not feel hungry anymore. I feel like walking now." He slipped down from her grasp and, through tired and weak, slowly walked behind her. In this manner, for 5 years, mother and son wandered from door to door, from village to village. With the sweet conversation, the boy kept his mother cheerfully distracted. Never again did the boy ask mother for food or comfort. Blisters painfully tormented the feet until they toughened like leather, and they walked on and on. The mother did not know where they were going. They begged, they moved, and they survived. So, in the life of Sai Baba, when Sai Baba was wandering, he wandered back to Shirdi in 1858, and there he stayed, making his humble village his permanent headquarters. At first it seemed as the new fakir had made his residence in Shirdi. He kept aloof from the villagers, spending his nights under a neem tree in all seasons. His bodily needs were minimal. Whatever food or tobacco he wanted, he begged for. The fakir preferred to be alone, and he made this known to anyone who invaded his solitude. Evidently, he disliked the villagers. After living for some months aloof under the neem tree, Sai moved into a small tin shed which served as a local mosque in the very poor village. Sai renamed the mosque Dua Kamai Masjid, the Mosque of the Mother of Mercy. Here the two men began faithfully serving him, one of the Hindu priest Malasapai, who named him Sai, and another named Tajuddin. Many of the villagers would sarcastically refer to them as the trio of the Masad. The trio of the Masad. So one thing about Sai Baba, he begged for food every day, and usually he would beg for only bread. And he would go to 5 houses in Shirdi. At each doorstep he would call out, "Mother, give me bakri," or "Mother, give me roti." He continued begging up to his last days in 1918. Sai always ate 1 or 2 of the breads himself, distributing the rest to the poor. Sai Baba also had several strange personal habits, besides being a very heavy smoker. While begging, he would often stop anywhere along the way, in secluded places or amidst a teeming bazaar, and unabashedly lift his dhoti to urinate, and after finishing he always shook his penis 7 times. Then he would continue with his begging. Seeing him behave in this uncouth manner, some of the villagers at first took him to be mad, not holy. Sai Baba also would take hours to relieve his bowels. As the numbers of devotees increased, this act of attending to nature's call was transformed into a ceremony of pomp and adoration. The ceremony that became the moving of his bowels, Sai would call Lendi, L-E-N-D-I. He would go to defecate every day at a fixed time, usually late morning in a nearby field, followed by a parade of devotees, some playing musical instruments. Yet this Lendi ceremony held a spiritual mystery. Sai Baba once explained, "While I pass my stool, I direct my abduls, my angels, my spiritual agents on the inner planes about their duties to the world. I call upon them through the sound of music during the parade." And so, in reporting that, Sai Baba's Lendi had to do with his spiritual work in the physical world. Although an outward act of perfect masters is seemingly enigmatic, it is inwardly significant because their every action is for the benefit of the world. Even when perfect masters urinate or defecate, they are doing universal work, but it is specifically in this gross world and is not spiritual work on the inner planes. So he was doing work in the physical world. So Sai Baba also was a ghoul type of spiritual personality. This ghoul type of master is very rare. Once a man went to the mosque where Sai Baba slept and found the physical limbs of the master's body lying separated on the floor. In one corner was the master's hands and arms, in another corner his legs and feet, in another corner his head, Every limb was separated from the torso. The poor man was aghast. Terrified, he thought of notifying the local police that the fakir had been murdered, hacked to pieces. But he feared that the police might try to implicate him in the crime, so he went home and was out of his wits on what to do. The next morning, the disturbed man anxiously went to the mosque. To his shocking surprise, he found Sai Baba alive, giving a discourse to some of his devotees, and he wondered if what had seen the previous evening had not been a nightmarish dream. The man did not know that this rare characteristic of the fakir, at times for their inner work, the perfect ones sometimes enter the ghoul state for their inner work. Perfect ones sometimes enter the ghoul state and parts of their physical body separate. When the particular phase of work is finished, their body automatically joins together and they return to the gross body consciousness. And that describes here ghoul. It's actually written ghost, J-H-O-S-E, but it's pronounced ghoul, is a spiritual term. One who is ghoul has the occult power to dismember his physical body and later rejoin his limbs. This ghoul characteristic is also predominant in some God-intoxicated persons, musts. It is a curious observation that Sai Baba had his ghoul characteristic. Since he was in charge of World War I, it could relate to all those human bodies that were shattered into pieces and their limbs scattered over the battlefields. And then there's another story of a man who witnessed Sai Baba dismembering himself. The fakir always slept alone. Each night, Sai Baba entered the ghoul state. It is said that he slept on a bed about 6 feet off the ground, but there was no ladder. Once, when Sai had gone to retire to his room, a man quietly crept to the window to see levitate to his bed. But he was aghast to see a body without arms, without legs, and without a head. Instantly the man was blinded, and his blindness served as a source of repentance for the rest of his life. And Sai Baba was not a person of no humor. He would often joke with his devotees and even poke fun at their weaknesses. However, until he died, he retained the austere ascetic life of a fakir. He would call God poor, a fakir also. Since God is poor, I am poor. When Sai Baba called himself a fakir, and that God the fakir is referred to as lack of worldly possessions, as well as the state of God that is infinite unconsciousness. In this state of God is poor because God does not realize he is God. Also in the state of God is helpless to bestow realization, which is the wealth of the perfect master. So, he wore the same kafni, or shirt, until it was so torn and tattered that one of his disciples had to forcibly remove it from him and give him a new one to wear. Even after that, Sai often sat with needle and thread, repairing it endlessly. This was the same garment given to him in the youth by Gopal Rao, his master. Later then, when it was completely in shreds, he sewed the pieces together and made a turban neckerchief, which he wore around his head. So Sai blended his unique personality of Hindu and Mohammedan characteristics and had followers of both faiths. He never forbade anyone from eating meat and sometimes ordered Brahmin priests to eat meat, to give up their vegetarianism and eat foods against their will. On a rare occasion, he himself would cook meat and distribute it to those gathered. Although his eyes were always intense and luminous and lustrous, his nature was cordial. His personal habits were austere, but his ashram compound was always informal and lively. His personality was sweet-tempered and tolerant, although at times he was jalali or fiery and would become enraged at someone's failures. An aspect of Sai Baba's jalali side was portrayed by a pet he had, a tiger. For some years, the tiger lived with Sai Baba at Shirdi and would accompany him on his walks. The tiger was his pet, and as an ordinary man would be walking a dog or cat. When the tiger died, it was buried by Sai in its own tomb. Now, folks, that is amazing. Because when you think of it, a tiger being domesticated, and who can do that? But one who is beyond our regular physical world, who has the ability to communicate with nature and control the tiger's whims. And when people came for Sai Baba's darshan or blessing, it was common for him to demand that they empty their pockets and purses of all their money and give it to him as dakshina, a monetary gift to the master. But if anyone approached him with material desires, Sai would say, Allah Mala Hai, meaning in this instance, God is the giver. Sai Baba kept a pile of small stones near his own large stone seat, and he would pick up a stone and throw it at whoever came for his darshan. Although miracles happened to many people, those who were hit by the stones did receive his blessing and became Sai's real devotees. And some of this story about the money he collected, he would distribute it to the poor. I mean, he would not hoard this money. He was poorest of the poor, so he definitely did not need the money. Now this describes Sai Baba's meeting with Meher Baba. One day, while the war was going on, the First World War, Sai Baba was returning from a Lendi procession, which is when he goes to the toilet, when amidst sweet music his eyes fell upon a particular young man, as they had never fallen on anyone else. Parvardigar, this single word with the force of oceanic sound he uttered as the youth fell at the old fakir's feet. And that describes, Parvardigar is the Sufi term for preserver of creation. It is the same one who is known as Vishnu in the mysticism of Vedanta. He who pervades is the almighty preserver. Who was Sai Baba addressing? The eyes that caught hold of Sai Baba's belonged to that Zoroastrian youth, Meher Baba, who had been kissed by Babajan, enthroned by Narayan Maharaj, and garlanded by Tajuddin Baba. The eyes of the youth and the eyes of the old fakir steadily gazed at each other, and the great word again came out of the old fakir's mouth, Parvardigar. Then for the third time the holy word sounded again, O Parvardigar, and prostrated himself before the young man. And the crowd of devotees who witnessed this astonished event knew it was extraordinarily significant. Deep in its meaning, though it took place on a dusty dirt road in the poor village of Maharashtra, India, in December 1915. As the crowd surrounded Sai Baba, the youth was pushed aside. Sai Baba returned to his seat while the youth continued wandering along the road. Our age cried out to the crowd, but no one heard. Don't you recognize who it is that Sai bowed to? You will bow down to him one day and surrender. Don't leave him behind. He is the ancient one. I see we're running short of time, but I do want to cover a little bit about Upasni Maharaj of Sikori. Upasni Maharaj of Sikori was a unique master. He was from a Brahmin family. He was well educated. He was again with that the photo of Krishna, Vitoba, in his chest area there, and he in 1892 he became an Ayurvedic doctor. He was well educated and trained, and in fact, here's a photo of him as an Ayurvedic doctor right there. You see? There's Sai Baba, Upasni Maharaj, and then you'll see photos of Upasni later on. But Upasni, in December of 1915, that young Zoroastrian again, Meher Baba, to whom Sai Baba had uttered Parvardigar, wandered in a dazed state to the Khandoba temple. Upasni Maharaj had again been fasting and was reduced to a skeleton. He was naked, sitting outside on the steps of the temple as the young man slowly walked forward with folded hands. Looking directly at him, Upasni picked up a stone, stood up and threw it at the young man, striking him on the forehead with such force that the wound bled. Was Upasni Maharaj angry with this young man? No. His face had a sweet, victorious smile, and the young man's bloody face did too. Smiles of victory were on both their faces. The young man did not run away, but approached closer to Upasni. Finally, they embraced. Upasni kissed the wound, then took him inside Khandoba's temple, where they stayed for 2 days alone, and then lovingly sent him back home. Both had been alone inside that temple, and no one knows what occurred, except that Upasni revealed to the young man his own divine identity of being the Ancient One. And here's a photo of Baba shortly, I believe, after that meeting with Upasni. And you could see he was, at that time, in a dazed look, in those early days in the 20s. And so, actually, that was 1915. So, Upasni Maharaj was amazing. He had a great following in Shirdi, and he, if you get a chance to go to India, you can visit the Sai Baba Pilgrim Center in Ahmednagar, and also then you could travel to Shirdi and to Sikori to visit both Sai Baba as a shrine, and then go to Sikori to Upasni Maharaj's ashram, and then of course you can go to Nagpur, to Tajuddin Baba, and also to Narayan Maharaj, and to Nagpur, and also to Pune, to visit the neem tree where Hazrat Babajan sat under. So until next time, as Mira Baba says, do your best in life, leave the rest to God, don't worry, be happy. Jai Baba.